So this is my name, Mingjie or MJ, also Mingjie is my Chinese name. And if you look at the Chinese character, this is the sun and this is the moon. And how Chinese hieroglyphics work is when you put it together, it means something else. So the sun and the moon, what do we get?
Water.
Close. That would be my next name. That's the water. Sun and the moon put together is illumination, right? So think about illumination, luminosity. And then jie means water, and this is the ground, this is the earth, and it means cleansing. So from birth, I was designed to just go and be the illuminated mirror for other people, for their clearing. So that's my sole purpose. And in today's keynote, I would like to invite you to tap into your heart and discover your soul purpose. Okay, great. So a little bit about me. I'm a former educator, social entrepreneur. I founded a nonprofit called the Love Story Media Incorporated. Our mission is to transform pain into passion, our self-destruction into self-expression, and our love loss into a love story. That's why it's called a love story. And thanks to our partners at Light Portrait, we now utilize one of the most progressive technologies out there to produce content that catalyzes self-awareness. And I would like to call this type of self-awareness reality augmented. Okay, so what do? Okay, we interview people who have chosen self-expression, artists, painters, builders, dreamers, and we ask them how they were able to transform their pain during one of the most heartbreaking moments in their lives, whether it's a death, a displacement, a disillusionment. But in our broken states, in the depth of our suffering, we have one thing in common. We have chosen that creative expression. So, why do we meditate? Anyone know why we meditate?
It's clearing.
It's a clearing, yes. Yes, it's definitely a clearing. People meditate because there's actually a mind-heart integration, okay? These are actually two separate centripetal forces, the mind and the heart chakra, right? And what happens is when we discover our genius, which I consider as the gene inside of all of us, what we do when we meditate is that we clear our minds so that we can go to the heart chakra and we can listen to our hearts. And they operate at different levels, which I'm about to reveal in just a few seconds. Our hearts are like an amethyst, okay? It's designed to be broken open, and when it does break open, we discover the treasures within. How many of us here have heard about the book, The Alchemist? Paulo Coelho? Yes, great. So you resonate with me on this, right? All right, next. Not yet?
I've had it 4 years.
Oh, really? You haven't read it yet? Oh, it will do something. It really will. If you know what, after this this presentation, maybe it's a calling. I don't know. Just throwing it out there. Yeah. Okay. So there is a great battle going on, okay? So what is within is also projected in this reality. And the great battle I propose is the battle between the mind and the heart, okay? The intellect and the emotion, the source that comes from the tree of knowledge and the source that comes from the tree of life. And it's continually raging. And I propose that there is a war because, I mean, just look at what's going on right now, right? You have super advanced progress in scientific and medical and just technological advancements. And then parallelly, you also have a rise in famine, global war, and devastation. So there's obviously a disconnect. And my proposal in this presentation is that there is a disconnect between the heart and mind. And what we'd like to do is to align it. Okay. I call this the great alignment, right? the alignment, all right, the soul mind. So the purpose of this keynote today is to pose the question, how does AR transform the broken heart, right? I'd like to first share with you a story about Rumi. How many of you have heard of this Sufi poet? So Rumi was a mystic, okay? He's also a Persian poet. And somewhere around when he was 40-something, he fell in love with a mystic named Shams of Tabriz, okay? This person became his lover, his best friend. This person inspired him to go out, just like the alchemist. It's the journey of the heart. This is before he wrote poetry, okay? He was just going out, falling in love, discovering the world. And then 3 years into the relationship, his lover was murdered, okay? Rumors had it, it was probably one of Rumi's sons who had killed out of jealousy, okay? But what happened in his grief? It was a long suffering type of grief. It was a heartbreak that resonated with his soul. And so he started to write poetry as a way to cope with the grief. And what he has manifested is 3,000 love poems. And so the first thing I want to show you is the idea of his concept of breaking open. So this is a famous Rumi quote. You have to keep breaking your heart until it opens, right? So that's the first phase of a heartbreak. Second one is the wound. So once it's breaking, the idea is that there's going to be pieces of you that's going to be cracking, just like the amethyst rock I was giving an analogy for, right? And the wound is where the light will enter into your heart. And then once your heart is broken open, dance. Just dance. When you're broken open, dance because you've torn the bandage off. Dance in the middle of the fighting. Dance in your blood. Dance when you're perfectly free, okay? So it's the idea of like just expressing and manifesting the message, the moment that your heart is calling out. So I would like to invite you to discover what is that inner message that's still captured in your heart. So going back to the keynote question, all right, we're going to do a quick exercise, but I want to first deconstruct the question, okay? How AR transforms the heart. She says hello. So let's deconstruct this question first, because I feel like there's a lot to be discovered just in this question. So let's start with the broken heart. How many of you could relate to me when I say that that a heartbreak, by definition, is crushing grief, anguish, and distress? Who can relate to that definition? That a heartbreak is crushing grief, anguish, and distress. Okay?
I don't get it.
You don't get it. Okay. That's all right. That's all right. We're here.
Heartbreak, how can a heartbreak crushing grief, anguish, because it's more painful?
Yeah, to describe the pain of it.
It's more painful.
Yes,
okay.
The broken heart. The broken heart state, that feeling, that depth of that state is crushing grief, anguish, and distress. Yes. Okay. So what I like to propose to you is that feeling, that emotion is actually a catalyst for the individual's transformation. Okay? So that is my dissertation if I had one. All right? So I want to do a quick exercise. I want all of you to take your palms out like this, your right hand. Okay? And oh, I like that, the Star Trek one. It's like, yes, peace too. So what I want you to do is I want you to take your palm and put it to where your heart center is. Okay, and close your eyes. I want you to breathe in deeply. Inhale. And then exhale. Inhale. Exhale. And do this for another 2 2 breaths. Keep your eyes closed. And I would like to give a tribute to your heart while you're breathing in, breathing out, and feeling your heart. Your heart is 100 times stronger than the brain when creating electrical fields. Your heart is 5,000 times stronger than the brain when creating magnetic fields. On average, your heart beats 100,000 times a day. It starts beating 4 weeks into your conception, and it forms before the brain is even formed in your mother's womb. The heart is the source where it sends all the hormones to all your vital organs throughout the body. So just feel it. Listen to it. This keynote is about transforming your heart. So I'd like you to open your eyes now, and we're going to go into distinction 2, which is what is transformation, okay? So first, before I go into transformation, I want to tell you what it isn't, okay? Just show of hands, how many of you, like on a scale of 1 to 5, you really understand transformation? Like you've been there, done that, you've lived it. 5. 1 is I haven't really thought about it. And 0 is I don't even know what that word means. So just show of hands, like on the scale of 1 to 5, like where everyone's at in their transformational process. Okay. Okay, great. So for some of you, this is a recap. And for some of you, this is something brand new. So let's talk about what it isn't. What it isn't. It is not positive thinking, okay? If your friend just passed away, you're not going to be going around thinking, well, at least I'm breathing, you know? No, you're going to make space to grieve your friend's passing because you love your friend. So transformation isn't positive thinking. What it also is not is refocusing your attention on something else. If you're walking down the street and you see a homeless person suffering, you're not going to go look the other way and just pretend like that the problem of homelessness doesn't exist. So refocusing your attention is not transformation either. What it also is not is it's not changing your environment. It's not changing your situation, okay? Because no matter how far you want to go, you jet set to the far reaches of the Bahamas, you're still going to be operating in old patterns, okay? So just to give you a preface of what transformation isn't, okay? So now what is transformation? No, you're good. Transformation, I like to propose, is like a metamorphosis. It's like a caterpillar to the butterfly, like a tadpole to the frog, and like a fetus to the human. It is still the same being. You are the ever-present witness of your evolution in this lifetime. So what we're really looking at is the journey. Transformation is the journey. And in Chinese, we call that the Tao, okay, or the way, all right? So it's the way we look at our journey. That is transformation. So let's get a little bit more detail on the next slide. So let's just give a real example right now, okay? So it's the shifting of your perception of your journey. Right now, we are at this moment, in this time-space continuum, sharing this conversation, hearing my vocal cords vibrate into your hearts, okay? Now, you have 3 ways of looking at this very exact moment. Let's start with where you are. Some of you are looking at this space like we're in a conference in a building. This is where you are. okay? Now, others of you are sitting in this very exact moment. You're actually thinking, wow, I'm part of something pretty interactive where, you know, mind, spirit, and animals come together, you know? And also, we're in this community where we are beginning to start something transformational. So it's your perception, right? And then there's who you are, okay? Are you a captive audience or are you a captivated audience? How is this showing up? How are you choosing to respond to the data, to the energy in this space, right? So it's shifting that perception. And then what are you co-creating? What are you going to be doing in the next, I don't know, 15 minutes, a week, a year of your life? What would you like to co-create? You know, positivity, you know, or do you want to produce more worry in your life, you know? And so this idea of transformation is shifting the way you receive information.
I didn't understand the last, what that has in the context.
Yes.
For me, that makes no sense in the context of what you're saying.
Okay, great. Let's just use this interaction as an example, right? So in this example, what is going to be your beingness right now? How are you feeling?
Good.
You're feeling good?
Good, yeah.
Okay, so you're bringing into this space just energy. Energy and critical thinking. You're sparking intellectual conversation. So that's what you're co-creating in this space.
Yeah,
okay?
Understanding. Actually, you know, my thing is understanding, you know.
Yes. So it's the energy you bring in. It's the beingness of you projecting yourself into this reality, okay? And other people could respond a completely different way. Other people could, you know, be like, this is kind of new for me. I don't know. You know, I'm kind of confused, you know. So, and then that's still energy. That's still your process in your journey towards transforming your beingness, okay? So that's what we mean by transformation. All right, next one. All right, so now let's get into the tech side, augmented reality, okay? And again, this is, I'm deconstructing the original question, how does augmented reality transform the broken heart, right? So we just finished deconstructing broken heart, we finished deconstructing transformation, and now we're doing augmented reality. I'm gonna wrap it up after this last deconstruction. So so by show of hands, how many of you have heard about augmented reality? Just heard about it. Okay. Keep your hand up if you've actually seen augmented reality. Seen it. Okay. I just want to say I love popping cherries, okay? I love the fact that none of you here have seen AR in action. So we're going to show you how that's done today. So AR, or augmented reality, is where we create a composite view by aligning digital information with the real world information. Next slide. Okay, so that's just to give you a quick intro on AR. So in this keynote, I'm not so much focused on how the technology works, like the back end of the algorithmic, you know, layers. But I am focused on how technology like augmented reality, virtual reality, and artificial intelligence can actually be a tool to transform and elevate mankind's consciousness, okay, to a point where we can manifest or co-create a space that comes from a heart-centered love. I'm interested in how AR could create self-awareness, in other words. And when people say that they're woke or they're awake, right? Depending on what neighborhood you're in, it's the understanding that we're all interconnected, right? That we all play the victim and then the judge, that we become the server and then the served, and we become the object and the subject. So that is the self-awareness, or what I like to call reality augmented. Okay, great. So let me go into that, right? So the idea of AR is that there's a composite view between the virtual and the real world information put together. Well, I like to say that the reality augmented have the mind and heart collapsing into each other in a composite view. We get what's called the soul mind. Greek for soul mind is suke. Can everyone say suke? Suke. Suke is a new way of perceiving. It's a new way, just like AR that you just saw in that context. I'm looking at it now in a metaphysical level. I'm looking at how can we pair what we just saw in the technology with the metaphysical space of the heart and the mind, what's called suke, the soul mind, or reality augmented. Okay?
Excuse me, is that what the athletes would call being in the zone?
Yes, flow. Yeah.
Right.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so I'm going to give you a quick introduction about who I am. I know you got a little taste. I'm going to go a little deeper now, okay? I'm going to first start with an introduction of the mind, okay? My mind is ego-based mostly, and it wants you to like me. I want you to all like me, right? My mind wants you to think that I'm cool, that I know what I'm talking about, and I'm also very mindful that this is a conference on tech, right? So I'm gonna speak to you through the mind first, and there's nothing wrong with it, by the way. Everything I'm saying right now, there's no right or wrong. It's just what is, right? So I'm gonna first do an introduction about on the mind. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is MJ. I am a social entrepreneur. I'm also a former educator. I've had over a decade of teaching experience. I've coached speech and debate. I ran competitive tournaments. I've designed public, private, and charter school curriculum. In 2007, I earned the Outstanding Educators Award. But I left teaching to help solve the mental health crisis for the youth. So I started a blog initially where I interview strangers about their love and loss experiences. But over time, it became a nonprofit. Thanks to the partnership with Live Portrait, we are now able to produce these interviews into a personal interactive journal, a diary, so that young adults can write poetry, music lyrics, business ideas, story drafts to process their pain, inspired by the shares of the artist interviews. We call this concept artist-inspired journaling.
And I say, butterfly until you're all the way out. Could I call myself stupid? Sent me so many signs to come to Minnesota to get this treatment. I wrote a book about it.
And then that day, I was actually very edgy and angry because I basically knew that he was going to die. And I didn't want to accept it. So my mother was staying in the hospital, and I was staying back in the home, which is actually in a neighboring town. And I just could just feel being in the hospital. Just
Allow myself to send me so many signs to come to Minnesota
to get this treatment. I wrote a book. I finally got it. I published a book called Dawn's Blessings, a whole story of God. It's like this was
All right, so that is what our organization does. We want to provide a very intimate experience for the youth who do not necessarily have the type of resources. So I'd like to share with you now another introduction that comes from the Suke, all right, the heart center space. Hi, my name is Mingjie, and I am a sex, love, recovering alcoholic addict. And ever since I was a little girl, I always loved love. I was boy crazy since I was 5 years old. And when I grew up, I was just kind of one of those girls that pursued other guys. And if I had to gender identify, I would consider myself a guy in a girl's body that happens to be gay. Okay, so that's kind of the space where I grew up. And when I graduated in college, finally getting off that carousel ride of perpetual examination, I was in a discombobulated, perplexed type of state of direction. I was having panic attacks when I graduated from college, and my college buddies were of no help, since they were just as lost and panicked as I was. But luckily, I met a best friend who later became my boyfriend and later became my husband. We had that kind of genuine relationship that Usher would call lovers and friends. When I was lost and confused, he told me to listen to my heart. And he said to me while I was still fresh in the real world and I didn't know what I wanted to do, he asked me, what would I do if money was not a factor in this world? Like, what would you do, right? And I tapped into my heart and I thought about when I was 5 years old, and my favorite teacher was Miss Janet, this kindergarten teacher, beautiful. And she would always tell me that I would make an amazing teacher. And I remember passing out her papers. I love the fresh smell of fresh press, handing them out to the kids. So I told my best friend I would be a teacher. And then I watched Dangerous Minds. Next one. And then I watched Dangerous Minds. How many of you watched that movie? 90s people? All right. So that's the one with Michelle Pfeiffer, and then she goes into the heart of the inner city. Well, I was very inspired by that movie. So I did exactly that. So I got into the inner city. I taught a majority African American population in the heart of South Central. I taught a majority Latino population in Gardena. And this is what happened. Cracked walls where bugs crawled, graffiti text dinosaur teachers laying back reading newspapers, and attitudes, smack lips, psh, walking out the classroom. Disrespected. Do you folks eat rats where you come from? I hate this class. Kids took my homework and turned it to trash right in front of me. What? But I didn't take it that personally after a while, because I realized there were elephants in the room. The elephants in the room were institutionalized racism, family incarceration, gang violence, sexual and domestic abuse, sex trafficking, drug trafficking, or just a breakdown of the family nuked. No room for real talk in the classroom. I had no tools nor context, no equipment, just presence, but emotional absence. We were living in parallel worlds apart. I didn't understand or connect with anything they experienced outside the classroom. I was there to cram information for exams, to command their attention, and to demand their cooperation. And it simply didn't work. But I only began mastering connection and real talk when I started bending the rules. The first girl that I bent the rule for, she was dark as obsidian, had a knife in her bag when I caught her with it, and I had a choice to make. She told me she had it because she was jumped and beaten down the week before. My mind said, I have to report this or I'll get in trouble as a new teacher. But then I remembered when I was 16, Christmas Eve, I had I had called the ambulance on myself because I almost OD'd on crystal meth. The cops came and asked me questions. I remember confessing, and for some reason, they didn't take me in. That clean record gave me a chance to one day become an inner city teacher, and I thought about what this could mean for this 12-year-old girl. Weapon possession for self-protection. So I told her to never ever bring it to school again. I will never know what it would be like to be in her shoes, walking the gang territories of what the locals called the jungle, wondering if today is the day that I get beaten down. I later chose a charter school. Another 12-year-old girl. I'll never forget her beautiful face. She loved poetry and loved expressing in my English class. She wrote me a note, and it said, "I want to be just like you, a beautiful teacher." And I thought to myself in that moment, it was just like the 5-year-old me who wanted to be a beautiful teacher like Miss Janet. I looked into her heart and into her poetry and knew that she was a poet just like me. 2 years later, I attended her funeral. 14, she was shot, but not before being sex trafficked by her mother and pimp. Since she was 9, she was in and out of foster care, forgiving her mother and then following her path. The game swallowed her. It's just easier to focus on the curriculum in the classroom, isn't it? So it was business as usual in the classroom. Nobody mentioned it. There was no opportunity to talk about the things that really mattered for the kids. Another child, another statistic, in and out like lemons, but really, can we make lemonade? No, we couldn't. But there was alcohol. I became resentful. I started drinking, started thinking to myself, what the fuck is missing? The parents, the administration, me, the system, so vague. There were moments I cared so much it fucking hurt, but I couldn't articulate it. So I held it in and lived this compartmentalized life. My day job is to teach them theoretical skills, but life skills, I had no idea. I drove 30 minutes from South Central 51st Vermont to my town home in Torrance with a hardtop convertible Lexus SC430, and summer vacations were trips to Hawaii. My job was to teach them skills, and I kept my mouth shut about the real talk, the social ills. But hey, that was not in my job description. But my inability to do something about what I knew was the key to being a true teacher, that resentment kept silently manifesting into projections. I had my own childhood traumas I was avoiding, domestic and emotional abuse. And so my mind and heart were disconnected. My bitterness manifested into episodes of alcohol abuse inflicted onto my best friend as I started treating him the way I was treated as a child, with condescension, contempt, and control. Using words that cut his manhood, his essence in half. I hate you. I hate this marriage. Get out of the house. Finding any excuse to argue, to make him wrong. And in that moment, I became that bully, that ridiculous and disrespectful student that I would have kicked out of my own classroom. That was my self-destruction. I had to take the goodness in my life, my rock, my foundation, and destroy it. The way the self-sabotaging kid, the bully, who would pick the kindest, weakest, and oftentimes the sweetest kid in the room, would cut that kid in half with their words and plant resentments in others from the resentments they are manifesting because they are not expressing what needs to be expressed and they are not feeling what needs to be felt. My buried expression manifested in frustration, projected as emotional and physical abuse on the one best friend that would have stood by me through thick and thin. Every day I'd sober up and become sweet. I dismissed what I did. He said, sad-eyed, one day you'll push me away. But I kept doing it because one day wasn't today. So I told him to man up, but I kept doing it. Perpetuated the abuse on the one friend who I knew wouldn't retaliate because he was weak for his love for me. And he was the sweetest, so he would take the abuse. After I got laid off, budget cuts, I was eventually picked up by a private school. It was the Rolls Royce of teaching. 15 kids to a class. Students had to get tested to get accepted in this $30,000 school. And on that first day, that was the first night he walked out for good. I was too embarrassed to change his name because I already told my colleagues what a wonderful man he was. So for the rest of the school year, I was hearing his name while driving back home to an empty home. It was the kids that year that kept it together for me, but I masked my pain in work and alcohol. I was a ticking time bomb set to blow up. Every day I put on smiles, but after school, I would act a fool. Drinking, not thinking, men lusting, dating. And I somehow put it together and show up to work with my "I'm fine" mask. How are you doing? I stopped utilizing the brain, and what was left was my heart. I listened. My heart was shattered glass, broken into a million pieces. I was not okay. This was not my way anymore. For the first time in a long time, I took that "just fine" mask off, and I wanted to cry, but not in front of the students. I couldn't let them see me so broken, so I stood in front of the class and told the kids, "I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore." I walked out crying. I didn't have the heart to tell them that I was heartbroken, that the man who inspired me to become this amazing teacher has now moved on with the new family. I couldn't tell them that I was so lost that I wasn't qualified to lead them. That evening, a voice convinced me that the world was scared of me, that the kids were scared of me. The image of my best friend, arms out, protecting his family, that voice told me I should prove to everybody that I wasn't going to harm anybody. I was bitter at God for designing love. I was bitter because why did he design us to love just so we can lose it? Why do we have to experience this type of pain? I hated God for setting this up, but I had prayed. Luckily, 3 friends were there that day, and 2 of them called the cops on me, and I was saved. The experience getting gurneyed from the apartment to the ambulance was so intense. That was my awakening. Doctors would call that psychosis, but if you look at the word psychosis, it's Greek for soul mind. And in that awakening, I felt the sensation burning. I was burning. But then I saw there was a white cop, and then I saw a black cop. They were gurneying me into the ambulance. And I started laughing at them. And I remember saying to them, "Don't you get it? It's all a joke. We're all the same." I saw in flashes the world recycled, a millennial of things made and destroyed, rich, poor, black, white, yellow, whatever it was all a joke. The point of us being here is not the things that we accumulate. The point of being here is to actually learn the lesson of loving. And that was the veil I saw. That was the composite view, the reality augmented. The vision of a partner with his arms out was my PTSD. I didn't want to be around families with kids. I lost my job. I was relieved. I lost my house. I started traveling, but before the house was lost, I researched how to be a stripper. Yeah. I wanted to be objectified. I wanted to be treated like trash from trashy men. I tried out for a foot fetish model. Didn't get the job. I tried out as a K-Town karaoke call girl, and I didn't get picked, okay? I called a number of strip clubs, and they told me I had to start out as a server. And with my master's degree, it just didn't work. So I kept drinking, and I mixed it with psychotropic medication, and I knew I was on this path of self-destruction. But it was a support group that began helping me get out of my own head and into my heart. What was so special about these support groups? The same groups I associated the words loser, rock bottom, mentally ill, I began hearing pieces of my narrative in their stories. I identified with the ex-gang member with the teardrop tattoo. I could relate to the pharmacist, the publicist, the rock star, the heavyweight, the producer, the mother with 3 children. All came in the context of recovery, but really the discovery was unfiltered honesty. They took their masks off and became the reflections, the darkly mirror, reflecting the hidden parts of me. So then I could see myself, the ugly part of my good, bad, and ugly. That ignited compassion. And through compassion, I felt the weight of my spirit lifting. I started substitute teaching while getting into publishing. And that was when a girl, another 12-year-old girl, had taken her life because her boyfriend had broken up with her. Now, she would have been just many of the other girls out there, but for me this time it was personal. It was no longer a blog, but now it was actually a nonprofit. I had to go all out. The children I didn't have with him is now projected onto a social enterprise, a nonprofit based on educational outreach and a benefit corporation on production and publishing. Today, I still have challenges of people getting too close to me. One of the greatest fears is to have faith and be deceived, to commit and be disrespected, to be loved and be rejected. And perhaps love story happened so I could learn the greatest lesson to love without fear. I want to recreate the psychosis I had experienced, to design a reality, a life augmented, leveraged by augmented reality. And the parallel reason why I started the love story is really because I wanted to transform my pain into passion. I wanted to transform my self-destruction into self-expression. And honestly, I wanted to create and transform my love loss into a love story. So thank you for that. So that was a long Suke version of me. I was inspired in this project by the definition of love. According to the scriptures, because I had a godmother who gave me a book called The Love Letters, when really it was the Bible, and she told me to turn to 1 Corinthians 13, so that's what I did. There's actually 13 verses on the definition of love. And what captivated me and fascinated me was this part, verse 12 in Corinthians 1:13. For now we see only a reflection as in a mirror, then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. And why did that fascinate me? It was the interviews I did. It was the anonymous groups that transformed my heart.
I can hear your heart break. I can hear the screams within your head. I can feel your heart shed every time you let someone in.
That's the whole reason I want to be a musician, is music is there for a lot of people, because a lot of people don't have a best friend or a grandma or a mom to be close to. So I want my music to be the best friend of people that are going through traumatic or hard things. Like, I want them to put me on and cry, but then realize that it's going to be okay.
I too have loved and lost. I too have loved and lost.
This is Keith Murray. This is a love story. The greatest love story ever told. Love is the highest elevation of understanding, but a force so strong it can't be broken. Not lusting over various emotions.
When things don't go your way or when things go bad, I don't know about other people, but I tend to forget how much love I have in my life.
The Lord of the Rings came out, and I was like, Jason would have loved this movie. Or I feel like he's still here. We can't just get rid of him. Like, his soul is still here. At least for me, it's still here.
It's the story of a woman who goes crazy. So it's not always nice to think of yourself as a crazy person.
Dis-moi que tu m'aimes, Couvre-moi de bijoux dorés, de doux poèmes et de promesses d'éternité hollywoodienne. Et permets-toi tous les clichés, tous les emblèmes, tous les symboles de contes de fées, dis-moi que tu m'aimes.
Because it was almost like time stood still the day he died, and I couldn't comprehend that days and weeks and months were past.
I was just dead inside, completely dead inside. I couldn't laugh, I couldn't cry. So, you know, I had these stories of unworthiness, and then on top of that, now I can't feel anything.
And I am going now. Painkiller in my heart. Can't feel nothing less.
The empty loneliness of not having my best friend again, but always having him.
I would think about many different countries before I would ever admit that I was from Iran. It was very, very difficult when you're young and you have to hide from your identity and you're carrying so much pain.
I was in bed all the time. I didn't want to spend time with anybody else. I didn't want to talk to anybody or my family or my friends, and I just wanted to be in my own little bubble.
And so that was really a journey and a challenge for myself to be able to experience all these emotions and let them go through rather than suppress them.
My name is Samuel J, and this is my love story. So it came. I too have lost in life to gain. So nothing ever really dies. It's coming back around like the tide.
So I ask you all to break your heart open. The idea of transformation starts with honesty, courage, and vulnerability. What I felt in those support groups was something called soul mirroring. We just repackaged it and called it artist-inspired journaling, but it's the same thing. So going back to the scripture, now we see face to face. If you look at a mirror, you can only see one side of you. But if you have another mirror facing each other, you can see the other side of you that you can't see. So it takes two. The idea of face to face is two souls coming together like a reflection facing each other. So that when you are in the middle of that conversation, that moment, that place of honesty, you could see the full view of yourself. That is reality augmented. That is Suke. Next one. So now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. Let's break that apart. Knowing in part is the id, what Freud would call that part of you that is raw. It's also the ego that dances in your head, that goes between light and its shadows. Next. Know fully as I am fully known. That's the idea that when we do soul mirroring, it is the understanding of knowing thyself by first knowing the other person in its entirety through compassion. And then we could take compassion and be fully known ourselves. So fully known, that last part in scripture, I believe is the third eye. It's the broken open state. It's the soul mind. Next one. So going back to the question, how does augmented reality transform the broken heart? Well, alas, the answer is in the mirror of the question. It starts with the heart broken. It starts with the heart broken, and as it's breaking, it's transforming reality. Let me say that again. It starts with the heart broken, and as it's breaking, it's transforming reality into reality augmented. So how does augmented reality transform the broken heart? It starts with the heart broken, transforming reality so that it becomes reality augmented. When Pink Floyd talked about the dark side of the moon, that's what we're talking about. That's the state that we can break open to see that. So let's go into the deconstruction. No in part is the heart broken. No fully is the reality transforming. Fully known is the reality augmenting. Next. So this goes back to my roots, which is I'm from China. Came here when I was 3.5. When we look at the word the path or the way or the transformation, right? We're looking at the word Tao, right? The Chinese word for Tao or the way, it comes in two forms. There's actually two different characters of the way. There is the path, this Tao, which means I'm going, right? So that is the journey. And then with the same word, Tao, they also have a new character. This one means arriving. This is the destination. The heart breaking open. I can see it as the heart breaking and the heart breaking open. So when you are in your Tao, you are actually heart breaking and your heart breaking open. And when it's broken open in that state, whether it's flow, right, in the middle of a soccer game, right, or whether you're snowboarding or you're talking to someone or you're finally calling that friend that you've been avoiding, you are breaking open and you have already arrived. Okay? There's no place to go. You're here. And at any moment you can be broken open. And that is the reality augmented. Next. So, my name is Mingjie. My AKA name is MJ. I am the founder of The Love Story. You could find us on thelovestory.org. You could find us on Facebook, and you could also find me on Instagram, and you could take a picture of this if you like. And that's my presentation. Thank you so much for your time.